Yo, what up? I haven't been uploading too many videos recently. There's a few reasons for that. I've been trying to improve the quality of videos. I've been working on a few big ones all at once, which is not a good idea, but I'm doing it anyways for some reason. And I've been busy with a lot of real world stuff, most notably of which being college. See, for the past few years, I've been studying visual arts, specifically video editing and graphic design. Well, I think my passion for video editing is pretty clear by looking at, anything on my channel. Graphic design I haven't really had a good opportunity to talk about, despite being a subject I greatly enjoy. So I figured I could kill a few birds with one stone here and make a video looking at graphic design, another topic I enjoy. That being Fire Emblem. One day when I was bored, I started looking at all the skills across the series. So there's a lot of them, and a lot of them have very distinct designs to them. The skill design in Fire Emblem is very interesting. There's a lot of variety in it. I think a lot of them are really well designed. I want to look at why they are, because I think it's an interesting topic, and I hope you guys do too. But you already know why we're here. You're at the thumb. Let's get started. So for starters, let's set up some ground rules. First off, I won't be talking about every skill because there are hundreds of those things, and we'd be here for actual eons. I just want to look at some highlights. There, I like do things well or do things not very well and discuss why that is. Second off, I won't be including any personal skills because all those more so match the character, and that's not really what we want to talk about. Boost runs, for example, is just like a picture of a guy crying because that's what he does. It doesn't match what the skill does at all, which is perfectly fine because it's not what it's supposed to do, but I feel like it's more interesting to talk about the ones that try to emulate what the skill does. And thirdly, some of these are just like super low quality pictures because they were only on the 3DS, so yeah, ignore that. I'll have pictures of all of them as I discuss them, but yeah, just be warned that all of them are the most pristine 4K resolution picture. Alright, anyways. What makes a good skill design? I narrowed down to 3 categories that a skill should succeed in to be well designed. First off, does the picture show what the skill does? There's not a lot of space in a skill because they are tiny, tiny pictures that go into a small corner of your screen. You don't have the space to make a large image indicating what a skill does. You have to do a lot with a little, and most skills succeed very well in this through arrows or basic pictures or shapes, and we'll see a lot of examples coming up. Second off, is the skill visually clear? Again, tiny space, so you have to make sure everything in there is important. Sometimes a skill has a picture that doesn't really mean anything. We'll see this a lot with fates, and sometimes a skill just has way too many things in it. We'll see this a lot with heroes. But those make it really confusing to tell what a skill actually does, which is the kind of important. And thirdly, does it line up with other similar skills? A lot of skills have families, like Death Blow, Warding Blow, Duelist Blow, stuff like that. If they follow patterns in gameplay, they should follow patterns in how they look too. Most of them do, not all of them, and sometimes things just creep into other patterns when they really shouldn't. You'll get docked a few points for that. All these combined lead up to one big question of, would a new player who doesn't know anything about anything be able to look at a skill and get a general idea of what it does? If you can, great. That's a well-designed skill. If you can't, let's see why. So for starters, we need a good baseline, something for every other skill to live up to. And I chose Vantage to start off, because Vantage I think is perfect. Vantage was introduced in FE4 and has not changed a bit in 30 years, both in gameplay and in its design. Vantage is a very simple skill to look at. It's an arrow pointing from right to left towards a dot, that's it. But that's all it needs to do. It indicates its gameplay perfectly because of how Fire Emblem battles are laid out. The attacker is always on the left, the defender is always on the right, and Vantage shows an arrow going from the right to the left, indicating whoever's on the right is going first, which is exactly what it does. It is perfect. The color scheme also really helps. It doesn't really represent anything the skill does, but it's just the red on the black helps it pop out a lot, which is good because Vantage is a skill you always want to know if someone has, because getting jumped by Vantage is a terrible feeling. It's so simple, but it's so good. It's 2 shapes, but it does everything it needs to incredibly well. It is the baseline for everything else to live up to. Vantage also introduces a family of skills, most of which come from heroes. Those being the ones that alter the flow of combat. Obviously Vantage, Desperation, Null Follow-Up, Quick Repose, that sort of stuff. And while most of these aren't really worth talking about, Desperation is, because Desperation or Altricity or whatever you want to call it, it's had a few names over the years. It follows the exact same design as Vantage, just reflecting what it does instead. It's 2 arrows pointing to the left, indicating whoever's attacking makes 2 attacks before the opponent gets the counter, which is, exactly what it does. It is just as well designed as Vantages, which is a tremendous boon. Next I want to look at Pass, which is a more interesting one. Pass is a curved arrow that sort of spins around. It doesn't really indicate what it does per se, but I think it still works. It's hard to show what Pass does with so little space. Like, you could draw someone like walking through someone else. That'd be hard to indicate. It would just be really small, so we wouldn't be able to get a good sense of it. I think the simple curved arrow indicates it much better. The way it's curved like gives a sense of momentum and movement, which fits with what Pass does because it helps you move around the map better. It's a situational but effective increase to a unit's move, which I think it represents pretty well. It's not perfect, just because a new player wouldn't be able to really tell what it does, but I think it's still worth mentioning as a pretty solid example. Another good one is Counter. This one I'll be super brief with, just because it's two arrows pointing away from each other, indicating you take damage, but they also take damage. That's it, and it's all it needs to do. Counter magic's similar, but that's really not worth talking about. I want to touch on some other skills real fast. They don't have too much to say, but I think they're worth mentioning just because they're solid designs. Replicate. Replicate has two silhouettes. One of them is a white one with a black outline, the other is a black with a white outline. It shows you're making like a mirror image of yourself. It's simple and it's good. Triangle Adept shows the weapon triangle with some thick white borders between the three colors, indicating that's stronger than ever. That's exactly what the skill does. It's good. Rend Heaven looks like the sky itself is exploding, and that's pretty cool. Doesn't really show what the skill does, but I mean, like, I don't know how you would show that. Lethality really doesn't show what it does, because it's like a purple spiral leading towards a yellow cross, which I think could indicate targeting like a weak point to instantly kill someone. And I'm kind of grasping at straws here. It doesn't really show anything, but I think it's a solid design regardless. Not fantastic, but just good. Now, let's look at the first family I want to talk about in full. Starting with Vengeance. Vengeance is a skill introduced in Awakening that when procced will boost your damage equal to half the amount of hit points that a unit is missing. It's represented by a purple fire and nothing else. I think this could indicate that it's like you're heating up, you know, things get intense, but it's kind of like, I don't know, again, kind of grasping at straws there. I think the purple does represent the fact that it's like on a dark mage, because sort of like spooky magic stuff, but Vengeance is fine on its own, but it's not something super notable. Next, let's look at Ignis, however. Ignis is a fantastic one. It's represented by a light blue line and a dark blue line sort of swirling and intersecting in the middle. It's so good, because that's exactly what the skill does. When you proc, it adds half your magic to a physical attack, or half your strength to a magic attack. That's represented by the two lines swirling in each other, they're mixing up, they're adding the damage to each other. It's amazing. The colors don't quite match up with the patterns that we'll get to later, but I think for this time it's worth it because the blue on blue complement each other really well. It's generally like such a perfect design. Like, I put it in the same like tier as Vantage. It fits what the skill does really well, and anyone can just look at like, hey, it's two things getting mixed together, because that's exactly what it does. It's perfect. Now you may be wondering why I brought this up right after Vengeance. Well, my friend, let's look at Ignis again, but in Engage, where it looks like this. Why? Why did they do this? It's just Vengeance, but it's blue this time. It doesn't fit the skill, though. It has no similarities to Vengeance aside from being a proc skill. It keeps the blue on blue color scheme, but this time does nothing with it aside from just have a flame. I guess it's called Ignis, and it's supposed to, like, I guess that indicates fire, but it's just, it doesn't fit. It really doesn't. It just blends in with a bunch of other skills, like Wrath. Wrath is an interesting one, because Wrath looks a lot like Vengeance. I think it's just an orange flame instead of a purple flame this time. Wow. Interesting though, Wrath has gone through a lot of design changes over the years. For the longest time, it was represented by a lightning bolt. Then in Heroes in Three Houses, it was represented by this fire. And then in Engage, it's now like the weird explosion looking thing, which is strange. But anyways, I think that the Heroes in Three Houses design of Wrath is the best because it matches with Vengeance really well. It matches with Vengeance because they both do the same thing. They benefit a low health build, indicating like the heat of battles getting to them, you know? It's a family of skills that work together, you know? Low health skill, Ignis. Ignis should not be here. Its new design is terrible. Why did they do this? This Wrath is good. I don't really like the other ones that much. The lightning bolt doesn't really mean anything, and the explosion shaky lines thing is just kind of, I mean, it's there. It's gone through a lot of changes. Not all of them are great, but I think this is the best one. I mentioned this earlier, but let's talk about stat colors. In Awakening, Fates, Three Houses, Heroes, and Engage, Every stat is represented by a different color that's indicated in a skills that buff it, i.e. rallies, base stat increases, like speed taker and that sort of stuff. And they look like this. Color stats are important because they directly relate back to the first point I talked about, that being, can you tell what a skill does just by looking at it? If you learn what each color represents, then by looking at a skill that buffs your stats, you should be able to tell what it buffs based on what it shows. As an example, let's look at attack speed solo from Heroes. So, this depicts a person standing in the middle of a cross-shaped grid with a background that is half red and half green. Based on what we know, we can assume this is because it buffs your attack and it buffs your speed. The foreground design is also really good. It's not the most creative thing ever, but is extremely effective of showing what the skill does. You've got a person in the middle of 4 empty tiles because that's what it buffs. When you're alone, not surrounded by anyone, it buffs your stats. So, looking at the skill, you'd assume it buffs a unit's attack and speed when they're alone, and that's because it buffs a unit's attack and speed when they're alone. It's fantastic. It also looks like a Manco supply crate, but we can just ignore that. Here's another good example. Look at this skill. Looking at it, what would you assume it does based on what we already know? Well, let's see. One half of the background is red, the other half is yellow. Therefore, based on our knowledge of Heroes' colors, we can assume it buffs your attack and your defense. Alright. Now, looking at the foreground, we have got 2 arrows pointing directly at each other with an explosion in the background. Based on this, it would indicate 2 objects colliding with each other at a really fast speed, which is exactly what the skill does. This is attack, defense, clash. The further you move on your turn, the bigger bonus to attack and defense you get. It's perfect! It does exactly what it needs to do so well. Oh, great. Here's another one. This is Def Res Bond. So isn't the gradient on this one's slanted? I don't know why. It's not like that on any other one. You know, it's got the def, it's got the res, that's great. I don't really like this skill though very much, because what does the foreground represent? It's really unclear. It looks like a pair of wings, so I think it'd buff flyers or something? No, it doesn't. You would never in a million years guess that this buffs a unit when they're staying next to another unit. I think it's meant because they're taking them under their wing or something. That's what it's trying to go for, but it's really unclear. It's not great, but at least it gets the colors right. Stats aren't the other things that are associated with colors. For another example from Heroes, we've got near and far. Best case of that is close counter and distant counter. Blue represents distant and red represents close. The directions of this are also extremely important. Blue is always something going to the left, and close is always something going to the right. There's a lot of skills like this. These 2 skills on their own are really interesting because, in a vacuum, it doesn't really indicate what they do at all, but because the whole family of skills matches them perfectly and build off them, it's really clear if you look at other skills. So that's something. Here's a good example. Dull close, dull far. It's got the colors, it's got the directions. But here's the thing, on a tiny, tiny phone screen, you can barely see the colors. That's kind of the point of the skill, it's dulled. There's a very faint blue and a very faint red on the inside of the explosion. That's it. The rest of it's all a deep red. But because of the lines, and based on what we already learned about the distant and close family and what the directions represent, it's still super easy to tell which one's which even without the colors. And that's great. Here's another good example. Close defense, distant defense. It's just the same thing, but with a shield and another shield. Perfect. The same thing pre-established with an extra shield indicating more defense. Great. Here's another one. Close guard, distant guard. Similar thing, but with a bell this time. I don't really know what the bell represents, to be honest. I think it's ring-a-ding-ding, there's danger nearby, because that's sort of what they do, but I don't know. That's kind of a stretch. Pavise and Aegis. Pristine. Here's the thing. You got the red one, you got the blue one. They each have a big shield to represent they block some damage. You know what they do? Just based on that. Awesome. They follow the pattern. Here's another good one. Close fortress and distant fortress. There's no line here, but that's alright. They still got the blue, they still got the red. And, the fortress represents an increase of defense. That's actually pretty cool, because in Fire Emblem, you're trained to associate forts with extra defense. Awesome, right? No! This is not fort close and close far. This is fortress defense and fortress resistance. Haha, great. That's the wrong color, dumbass. Fort res here is alright, It's blue, it's fortress, indicates your res going up. This one is completely wrong. We learned from stat associations that red is attack, yellow is defense, and this is not yellow, this is red. Based looking at this, you would assume it increases your attack, but it doesn't. In fact, it does the exact opposite. It decreases your attack and increases your defense, which completely contradicts what the skill looks like. Plus, these two on their own, they look like a close and distance sort of thing, but they aren't. It's really confusing. This could have been entirely avoided if they just made this one yellow. Now, while on the subject of weird hero skills, let's talk about Oversaturation. Ho ho. Heroes is a game with a lot of different skills. Some of them are pretty similar, and some of them look pretty similar. As an example, here's Attack Res Push, and here's Attack Res Ideal. For starters, they both got the color scheme, and both provide similar buffs actually. That being, when you're at full health, you'll gain a boost to your attack and res. Pretty good. I like the family here, but the problem is they look way too similar. They're both just guys doing that. The colors are different. This one's like way more detailed for some reason, which is actually really jarring compared to everything else in the game. Because, I mean, skill design is pretty simplistic for the most part. Because you are not going to see all these details on a tiny phone screen. And even on a teeny tiny phone screen, these two look awfully similar. Like, it's not the worst offender, but it's pretty bad. Speaking of really hard to differentiate skills, let's look at tiny indicators and tiny symbols. Because, again, Heroes has a lot of different skills, and some of them are just like extensions of other skills. Some of them are not very creative in gameplay, and some of those are equally as uncreative in their design. As example, actually I have a bunch of examples for this. I don't even know what half these skills are called, but look at them. Pulse Smoke, but with another guard effect, because it probably does that. Tides Pulse, but with a guy cowering in fear of the giant flash of light behind him. Life and Death, but with no panic, no debuff. It indicates what they do, but in a very unthematic and lazy way. Like, you're familiar with Show Don't Tell, right? This is basically the graphic design version of that. Like, it shows you what it does, just in a really boring way. Except this, I don't even know what this does. This is like a attack wave play something? I don't know. Attack wave extra spicy Dorito. But wait, it gets worse, because that's like a weapon refines for a second, right? Weapon refines in heroes tend to give every stat plus some effect, you know? Which first off introduces a rainbow to the background, which is a pretty good base, you know? It indicates, hey, every stat's getting buffed. Alright, throw whatever the effect is on top of that. As an example, Draco Falchion. Brave Alms Refine, look at this. Got the four things, got the whew. We haven't talked about that, but that's Wind Sweep. This is a pre-established skill that's actually on regular Realm, so any Alm fans will already know what it does. So if you have basic knowledge of this, you'll be able to tell what it does from a glance. Awesome. What does this do? This is... I mean, I don't know. So you can barely see attack and res in the background based on the red and blue. Then, like Speed Taker or something, or maybe that's a Sabo skill, they look very similar. Then, like, it breaks your defense or something, and then if you're in a line, something else happens. There's too much going on in this skill, dude. It's super unclear at this size. On a tiny phone screen, it's just gonna look like a mess of colors that don't mean anything. This is actually just perfect representation of Hero's power creep, my god. There's so many things going on in this skill. What does it mean? What does this do? What does it do? Enough of this, though. Let's talk about Fates and blow skills, because blow skills do not blow. In fact, they're pretty good. Here's Death Blow. What do you think it does just by looking at it? Because it's actually pretty clear. First off, it's red. That means it increases attack, you know, pretty solid. Second off, there's big boom thing. It looks like an automatopoeia, which is good. The automatopoeia sort of indicates that, like, there's some sort of action going on, like, you know, it's a pow sort of thing. Which is a good representation of what it does, that being it buffs you when you initiate combat, when you hit someone with a big stick, you know? That's cool. They all follow basic design, they just have to switch out the colors. As an example, this one buffs res, this one buffs speed. This one is kind of weird, because they have a bunch of them that, like, the buff combat stats, so, like, this one buffs hit, which is, I mean, they had to make a new color for that, but that's alright. Like, here's another one. This one buffs defense. Oh, wait. No, it doesn't. That's Soul. Soul is a strange and sad case. Soul was conceived back in FE4 and has not really changed its design very much since. The problem is, it's not the only thing with that design now. Like, it came before all the blow skills, but with how many of these things there are and how it sort of just blends in with them now. Armored Blow especially is the biggest offender because it has the exact same color scheme. Like, if you take Soul and, like, flip it around, then you just get something that looks almost exactly like Armored Blow. And it's really confusing. They were willing to change Ignis' design to be complete garbage, but not touch Soul at all. Why? There's so many things they could do with this, but... like, come on. Now, you ready for the funny part? This whole section about blow skills was just more Seb to talk about how bad Heroes' design is again, because Heroes loves blow skills because heroes blows. But anyways, there are so many weird variations on blow skills, and the problem is they all just do the same thing with their design. Look at these 4. Attack def blow, but with an extra line. Attack res blow, but with an extra line, but it's curved slightly. Attack res blow, but inverted. And then attack res blow, but with another extra line. What do these mean? Like, obviously, it increases your attack and defense when you go into battle, but what's this one do as opposed to this one, or this one, or this one? Nothing. You can't tell. They're meaningless. And again, the classic problem, tiny phone screen. All these are going to look exactly the same when you look at them in Heroes. Great. I'm actually done looking at Heroes, but I'm not done talking about meaningless skills yet. Because let's look at Fates. Fates is a weird game that has dozens, if not hundreds, of skills. Because there are just so many classes in that game that each get 4 skills of their own. They have to come up with some pretty crazy designs. I don't think they necessarily did a bad job, just with the sheer quantity of these things. Some of them were bound to be better than others, and some of the worst just look really weird. An example, this is Malefic Aura. I'll give you 3 seconds to guess what it does. Did you guess the nearby foes take more magic damage? Because I sure didn't. Look at this. What does this represent? What does it mean? Because it looks like the Northern Lights, which doesn't mean anything. It looks like an unmixed paint can, that's what it looks like. I actually like the design of this, but it doesn't represent the skill in any way, shape, or form. Here's Quixotic. I don't even know how anyone would even, like, assume what this one does. This thing increases hit and proc rates. It looks like a flag of a country, dude. Why does it do that? And why is it represented by this thing? Okay, this one's simple. Quick Draw. You deal 4 extra damage when you attack someone. It's kind of like Death Blow, actually, except it just doesn't match at all. It's effectively a blow skill, but it just looks like, I don't know, looks like someone ripped their green screen or something. These two, I don't actually have much to say on them. These are even better and better odds, which are, for stars, the best names of any skills, hands down. Like, I love them so much. These 2 skills have the user regenerate a bunch of their health on either even turns or odd turns. But the problem is, the skills look really strange. Even better is, like, it's not terrible, because a lot of life regen skills have a sort of, like, spirally effect to them. I don't really know why, but it sort of fits. It's really bright to look at, because it's a mix of really, like, pastel-y colors. It's a weird skill. Well, it's not as weird as Better Odds, though. Better Odds looks like a fractal. What does it represent? Luckily, that's just a Fates thing, because they're like a million skills in Fates. Engage fixed most of those. All the skills there, first off, have a better art style. That's just much more minimalistic. Most things are solid colors, there's an occasional gradient or two, but it's nothing like whatever the hell this is. And additionally, most of the skills are just kind of better designed. As an example, here's Level Boost. When you have this skill equipped, when you kill someone, you gain 1 level, effectively. So it just makes you, like, notably more powerful every time you kill someone. That's represented pretty well in how it looks. It's just arrows pointing up with, like, a triumphant, like, boom, like a radiant light in the background. It's good. It works. I have no qualms with this. In fact, it's solid. But it's not as solid as Hobble. Hobble is fantastic. Looking at Hobble, what do you think it does? Because it's exactly what it looks like. It decreases someone's move. When you hit someone with a dagger or something, it'll decrease their move. That's Hobble. It's represented perfectly. Great job. Even some of the weird skills like Sword represent what they do well. As an example, favorite food is one I don't think even, like, remember. If someone eats a meal with the skill equipped, it'll fully fill their engage meter, which is so strange. It's a plate, you got your fork and your knife, you got a star representing some satisfaction. Mwah. It's good. Unyielding. This is a good one. Unyielding's kind of weird to describe, but basically, if you're at low HP at the start of your turn, you'll regain a bunch of HP. It's simple, and I love the design for it so much. It's like, it's someone, like, on their knees getting back up. You know, they're back, they're ready to keep going, you know? You're back in the fight. I think that for the most part, Engage rocks with its designs. Like, as you've seen, they all represent what they do really well. They're all really simple to look at. Even on, like, a tiny, tiny picture, because of the art style, you can just tell what they are. They're great. For the most part. There's one skill, Engage, that I feel is genuinely the worst design skill across the series that I know of. Because, I mean, there's a lot of them. I probably don't know all of them. But, even if it's the worst one, it's down there for sure. Take a look at this. Now, if you know what this does, pretend for a second that you don't. And try to think, based on what it looks like, what the skill is called and what it does. Because I can assure you, it doesn't match what it actually does, or what it's actually called. This skill is called Lagoo's Friend. When active, it will half the damage you take, but it'll remove any avoid. Yeah, how are you supposed to figure that out? Nothing about the skill actually makes any sense. Looking at this skill, it looks like a person standing alone with some sort of thing behind them. Like, what is this behind them? It looks like it's either a dark aura, a mountain range, or like topographical lines of a map. What actually is this supposed to represent? I don't see this. I think, oh yeah, this guy takes half damage, because that's not indicated at all. Let's talk about the name too. Lagoo's Friend. Lagoo's Friend. I don't see any Lagoos here, and this person is alone in the middle of like a landslide or something. No friends. So just to reiterate, its skill, it's called Lagoo's Friend, and halves your damage, removes your void. It has no Lagoos. It has no friend. It does nothing to represent damage being halved or a void being removed. It's just a person staying alone in the middle of the field. This skill is horrible. It fails at every single criteria it's supposed to meet. Does it show what it does? No. Like, I guess it's visually clear, but at the same time, those gradients are really hard to see. The top one just blends in with the purple. Does it line up with other similar skills? No, because there's nothing like Lagoo's Friend, which I guess makes it like fit in its own family, because no one wants to be in its family, because it's an unfriendly skill, despite being called Lagoo's Friend. I wanted to end on like a note like this, so I can show you what a truly bad skill looks like, because Lagoo's Friend is truly and undoubtedly a horribly designed skill. Anyways, that's all I got for you today. I've just been wanting to talk about Fire Emblem skills for a while, because they piqued my interest one day, and here I am talking about them. I don't have any like grander message I'm trying to get across here or anything. I just wanted to make a video because I feel like I've been lacking on that department recently. And it does seem like a fun filler one. And hey, I had fun. Hopefully you did too. I do intend to actually like make things of quality at some point. I've just been busy, but I assure you, I'm working on stuff, right? Anyways, see you in the next video. Deuces.